Hello everyone and welcome to a very enjoyable attacking game from the tiebreaks of the 2022 FIDE Grand Prix. It's Leinier, Dominguez, Perez versus Wesley. So the first game they played ended in a draw, and this is now the second game. So let's enjoy that. And the other match is played between Radoslav Wojtaszek and Richard Rapport. So we're gonna discuss what happened in that one. Maybe I even show that one. We'll see how much time I will have. But now let's focus on this one because it's a really a wild one. And again, it's interesting. It features the gioco pianissimo, translated from Italian. That would be like the very quiet game or the quieter game. And whenever we see a game featuring the very quiet or the quieter game, it's pretty much anything but quiet, as you'll see here. So Leinier opens with e4. We have e5 by Wesley, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. Sorry about that. The Italian game is on the board, and we have knight to f6 going for the two knights defense. And now we have d3 going into the so-called modern bishops opening, and now bishop to c5, shifting the game over to the gioco pianissimo or the quieter or the very quiet game. So here white castles, black castles, and now h3. These are all very standard moves, nothing out of the ordinary here. d6, we have c3, now preparing to start that expansion on the queen side, and Wesley of course stops this with a5. So rook to e1 and bishop to e6 now, and here bishop to b5. It's bishop captures and e6 is also playable. For example, Aronian played this against Jordan van Foreest in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational last year, and he won a very nice game. But bishop to b5 is the more standard approach here. We have bishop to a7 and now knight b to d2, preparing to shift the knight over to f1 and then to e3, g3, depending on what black plays. So knight to e7, we are preparing to kick away the bishop with c6, and now white strikes in the center with the d4. We have knight to g6, and now usually white just continues with knight to f1. This is a known position, but here Dominguez goes for a bishop to a4, and it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. And it is a standard move because black will always play c6. We're going to move the bishop, but usually the bishop is moved to d3, but here it's going to be a little bit different. So now we have knight to h5. Wesley wants to get the knight over to f4, and already it's a bit of a different approach because the bishop is not on d3, so knight to f4 does not come with tempo. So knight to f1, we have knight h to f4, the bishop is not on d3, so we don't have to react to this, and now just knight to g3. We have c6 now, preparing to further expand on the queen side, and the bishop back all the way to c2. So here, queen to d7, now putting a lot of pressure on that h3 pawn, and we defended with knight to f5. Also, the bishop from c2 gives more support to the f5 square. So here we have f6. This is, again, one of the rare occasions where it's okay to play f6, and bishop to e3 now. And what do you play here? Well, that's the problem with very analyzed lines like the gioco pianissimo here. It's been analyzed so much, so many players did work on it, so many chessable courses exist on it. I think maybe even Wesley made a chessable course on the Italian game. I'm not sure. I mean, pretty much everyone has. Now, the thing is, you have to play d5 here, and it's such a funny forced line that if you don't play it, you're just going to be worse. Or knight to d5, but d5, I'm just going to show it because it wasn't played in the game, and it is super fun. So d captures on e5, bishop captures on e3, knight captures on e3, and now f captures on e5. We're going to play e captures on d5, c captures on d5, and now bishop captures on g6. We're going to play knight captures to defend our e5 pawn, and now knight to g5, go after the bishop. That's also the defender of the d5 pawn. So we're going to play knight to f4 to defend our d5 pawn. And now we would probably see something like g3, knight captures on h3, and now we don't have to recapture right away. We can execute a d4. So you can see it's a very long forced line that if you don't know the theory, then you might run into some trouble. So here we would see knight g5. You will have to give back one piece. For example, captures on e3, rook captures. We're going to see a queen trade, captures, and now even bishop captures on a2 is possible. And after rook captures on e5, we get this position with equal material, and it's well, a very drawish endgame. So that's what you kind of have to play here. But Wesley played king to h8, and although it's a very nice prophylactic move and has many uses, it gives white a little bit of extra time to do what he wanted to do. So d captures on e5, and now if you play d captures on e5, we can just trade, for example, captures, and bring the rook into the game with tempo. It's not much, but it's perfectly fine for white. So instead, Wesley plays f captures on e5, and now knight to g5. Now we are winning the bishop, so d5, Wesley pushes d5 now. Now knight captures on e6, queen captures, bishop captures on a7, rook captures, and queen to g4. So you can see this position is a lot more unbalanced than the one that we've discussed, and that's exactly what you want. Also, if this knight moves, you're getting checkmated, so we have to find a way to defend the pawn. Now, a nice way would be b6 or b5. We expand on the queen side, and also we just defend the g7 pawn with the rook, so that might not be a bad idea. Wesley decides to go for queen to f6, defends the pawn this way, and also if the f file clears up, you have queen captures on f2, so that's also in the position. Rook 8 to d1, and now h5. Wesley kicks away the queen. We have queen to f3, and now queen g5. Black also puts pressure on that g2 pawn, and if you're not careful, even knight to h3 might be a problem. Not for the moment, the queen is guarding the h3 pawn, but everything is hanging here. So queen g3, offering a queen trade. Can Wesley accept this? Well, if he accepts it, captures, then what do? You have to move the knight, for example, knight to e6. Now he captures on d5, and if c captures, rook captures, and it's just a much better position for white. So much is hanging here. If the knight moves, this knight will be hanging as well. So let's say rook f6, we defend. Now knight h4. Now let's say knight captures. Here we're first gonna play rook captures on e5. Now threatening this knight and this knight, and once you play something, let's say you defend this knight, we're gonna play rook captures on h5 with check. Now we're gonna pick up the knight, and if let's say rook h6, we're gonna play rook captures, and g captures on h4, and you get this position where you're up 3 pawns in an endgame, and you are of course completely winning. So you can't really trade queens here. Wesley figures this out. He plays queen back to f6. Now comes king to h2, improving the position of the king a little bit, and now asking black, what do you play? So here, rook back to a8. Dominguez wants to activate this rook somehow. We have queen back to f3. Now again, there is pressure on that h5 pawn. So if g3 now, the h3 pawn is not hanging. The king is defending it. We can pick up the h5 pawn. So knight to h4, quickly attacking the white queen. Knight captures on h4, queen captures, and now e captures on d5, opening up the position this way. And here Wesley plays, there is no better move than what Wesley played. You could play knight captures on d5, but then we just go into queen to d3, and again white is much better. So Wesley played knight captures on g2, and it makes sense because if you capture the knight, then rook captures on f2 wins the queen, and if you capture with the king, then of course we just pick up the queen. So none of this works. So Leinier plays the only move that works here for white, and that is queen to d3, threatening checkmate on h7, and now e4. We have to throw in this one move. So if queen captures, we can trade queens. So rook captures on e4 is played, but now this gives Wesley just enough time to play queen captures on f2. So now the rook is blocking checkmate, and we are threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries once we move our knight. So now the position is actually completely winning for Leinier. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the only winning move that wins this for white while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting it, as it's the only move that wins. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is king to h1. That's the good stuff. That's why I like this game so much, because the only winning move is sidestepping any discoveries. This is what Dominguez played, and now there isn't really all that much Wesley can do, because and just to give you an example, instead of king h1, let's say you play something like what can you play? Rook e2. Okay, you're attacking the queen, you're threatening checkmate, seems like you're winning. The problem is knight to e1. You discover a check, and also you are attacking the queen, and yes, yes, rook captures on f2 will be played. Rook captures on f2 comes with check, and now after king g1 we play knight captures on d3, so there is no checkmate. Bishop captures on d3, rook captures on b2. All of a sudden you're down the exchange as white, and you will lose this game terribly. So king to h1, it's the only winning move. Leinier plays it, and now knight to a. Now, what do you play? There are no good discoveries, and you know that once the rook moves, you are getting destroyed. Just rook to e2 now will be sufficient. So knight to h4 tries to give back some material in order to survive. Rook captures on h4, now threatening checkmate, and here Wesley plays g6. Sort of hoping for queen captures on g6. Maybe then he's going to be able to stir some trouble with queen to f3, but Leinier just played rook captures on h5, and it was in this position on move 34 that Wesley so resigned the game. And what an incredible victory for Leinier Dominguez Perez in this tiebreak of the FIDE Grand Prix. So here you resign, because if you capture the rook, then this is just checkmate, and if you don't capture the rook, whatever you play, you're still getting checkmated. So whatever you do is checkmate. Of course, Wesley resigned after rook captures on h5 because it's mate in one regardless of what you play. And just so we don't forget, these are now the pairings for the semifinals. Nakamura Hikaru will face Richard Rapport, and Levon Aronian will face Leinier Dominguez. That will be played tomorrow, so we are going to enjoy nice 3 days of the semifinals before we see who is in the final. So what do you guys think? Will we see Hikaru, Rapport, Aronian, or Dominguez in the finals? What do you guys predict? So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Another one, another very quiet game that was anything but quiet, but they keep calling it that. It was called that, long time ago, some 500 years ago. So yeah, we're not going to hold that against them. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank God for making me an atheist. John Anderson, sorry about that in this position. Feel free to pause the video. Jonathan Kemp and Fork Entry BU Shine Tomb I channel for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Grand Prix until it ends. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent start of your weekend.